Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to the 101st episode of Fallout 4 Mods Weekly. Although it hasn't been quite weekly as of late. We'll work on that. Anyways, this week we do have a nice group of mods, some really cool stuff, very high quality, and some very interesting stuff as well, including a few mods you guys asked for last week. So let's go ahead and get started with the first mod, known as the Overwatch Standard Issue Pulse Rifle by BrainstormEpilog. This is going to be a recreation of the Half-Life Pulse Rifle in Fallout 4. You guys may remember a mod by the same author from last week that was a sort of homage to this weapon. Well, now we have a full-on recreation featuring custom animations for Fallout 4, and this thing is absolutely amazing. The sound design, the custom projectiles, the custom animations all make this weapon very unique and very, very cool. While it may not fit the lore of Fallout 4, it's still a very fun weapon, and one that a lot of you guys were hoping to see, not only with the weapon featured in last week's Mod Weekly, but also before that. A lot of people have been asking for a mod for this weapon, and now we have a proper one with all the custom bells and whistles that make it so cool. Now, like I said, some of the highlights of this mod include those custom sounds and custom animations, but sadly, there's not really a whole lot going on beyond that. As far as custom attachments, there are a few options that change the way the weapon performs, but there's pretty much nothing that changes how this weapon looks aesthetically. No custom sights, no new magazines, barrel options, or anything like that, which, to be fair, it would be pretty hard to come up with some options for this very unique weapon. Now, when it comes to getting your hands on this thing, as the author states, it doesn't really fit in Fallout's lore, and that is true, so it's kind of hard to find a nice way to implement it into, say, leveled lists or even a set spawn, so the author has chosen instead to leave this as a craftable item over at the chemistry station. I will say, though, the author did come up with some lore for their last pulse rifle that was inspired by Half-Life, so I don't see why this one couldn't maybe make a fit somewhere, although they would have to get pretty creative with it. Regardless, at the very least, you can craft it, so you can still get this in-game without needing to use the console to spawn it in. Altogether, this makes for a very fun weapon to use in combat, and definitely one that's really cool just to play around with for a while. I don't see too many people making an entire build around this, but if you wanted to roleplay as somebody from the Half-Life universe, this weapon allows you to do so very well. Now, the next mod we're checking out is a brand new combat rifle overhaul known as the Army Combat Rifle by Micalov. This is going to be a complete rework of the combat rifle's design, making it into something very different, fitting more of an assault rifle or SMG style role, depending on which attachments you choose over at the weapons workbench. So first of all, what you can already see on screen is this has an entirely new design for the combat rifle, including a more vertical pistol grip, a separated stock, and a completely redesigned foregrip and barrel. Even the receiver has seen some pretty major tweaks to make it fit all of the new design. Additionally, all of the magazines have been reworked as well. Similar to my old immersive combat rifle mod, this is going to resize the magazines depending on which caliber you use. A very nice touch by Micalov, making it so that pistol calibers use pistol style magazines or SMG style magazines, and then rifle calibers will use different size magazines as well. And there's even options for both 5.56 and 308 magazines that have their own different size mags, which is really cool. The attention to detail there is very nice. Not only have all of the attachments been completely redesigned in their aesthetics, but also there's the addition of some new attachments. Again, the combat rifle in this mod is completely replaced and reworked. Because of that, it's not going to be compatible with any attachment mods like the attachment pack or any other mods that do something similar, as this is pretty much its own weapon. Now, there are two ways to download this mod, one of which is as a replacer, so you can completely replace the combat rifle. Alternatively, though, you can download this as a standalone weapon, so you can find the vanilla combat rifle or this one in the same game. And if you do decide to go that route, the weapon will instead be called the Army Combat Rifle as opposed to the regular combat rifle. A really cool feature of this mod is, much like Micalov's other weapons, this does use pretty much all vanilla textures, so any retextures you have will apply to these weapons, as well as any Creation Club skins you have on top of that. One small note when it comes to obtaining these weapons, like I said before, there is a replacer option, so that one's pretty self-explanatory, but if you do go the standalone route, you can find these on the same level list that you would find the combat rifle, so pretty much anywhere a combat rifle would spawn, you have a chance of seeing the vanilla one or this one, or alternatively, you can craft this version over at the chemistry station. Altogether, this makes for an awesome new weapon or a weapon replacer, depending on your choosing, and again, as usual, wonderful work by Micalov. Now up next, we've got something a little bit different. We have the Riverside Settlement by Elha also known as Zorkaz. This mod is going to add a brand new settlement into the game, located just under Cutler's Bend and to the left of Gunner's Plaza. This is going to be located on the river and can actually be spanned across both sides of it. So you can build a bridge between the two sides, maybe a settlement that is split between the two different shores of the river, or you could build a floating settlement, a boat. It's really up to you. That's the whole idea behind settlement building in the first place. But this does add a really cool water-centric area to build in, something we don't have a lot of in the vanilla game, and definitely not too many in the form of mods either. It's up to you how creative you get with this one, but it is definitely a really interesting location for a settlement. Many of you may not know this, but settlement building is actually one of my favorite features of Fallout 4. It may not be everybody's, but it's something I do enjoy, and so when I see settlement mods like this, I do get a little bit excited because I love having more places to build at. If you want to access this settlement, it's a little bit different than most settlements. Instead of a regular workbench, you actually access it through a broken down truck located in the area. This functions as your workbench. You can activate it or store things there. It works just like a workbench, it just uses a different mesh. Pretty interesting. But yeah, if you're looking for a cool new area to build at, maybe alongside a river, or you want a water-based settlement, this is a pretty cool one that isn't just your typical ocean-based settlement. So this is definitely an interesting one. As always, excellent work by El Ha. Really cool stuff. Now the next mod we have is a pretty iconic weapon, and that is the Gyrojet Rocket Pistol by Pig and Millenia. This is going to use the Gyrojet assets from Millenia's New Vegas mod and port them over into Fallout 4. Now if you're not familiar with the Gyrojet pistol, somehow this is a very experimental pistol that uses rocket-propelled bullets. These aren't explosive bullets, they just use rockets to propel them forward. Pretty dang interesting, and it sounds to me like a very Fallout weapon, and somehow this is the first version of it that we've seen for Fallout 4. Because of the really cool concept, this is actually a weapon that I've seen requested a lot on the Nexus and in YouTube comments and even on the Discord, but now we finally have a version of it. There's not too much going on in the way of custom features like attachments or animations. There are a couple of attachments at the weapons workbench that change the performance of it, but there's just no real cosmetic changes to it whatsoever. It does use vanilla deliverer animations, but you can download any deliverer animation replacers and they will work on this weapon automatically. One attachment that is available in this mod that I think is pretty neat is that it does turn the rocket-propelled bullets into explosive bullets, which is a really fun touch and makes this weapon a little bit more viable in combat, considering the projectiles are pretty slow. If you want to get your hands on this weapon, given that it's very, very unique, it is actually a one-of-a-kind weapon found in the treasure room in Jamaica Plain. So you're not going to be able to find this on Leveled List, and you'll never see this thing shooting back at you, as there is only one version of it in existence. One more very, very important detail about this mod is that it does require munitions to function, as it does use munitions for the custom rocket ammo type. For those of you who still aren't on the munitions train, this is a simple mod that adds a few new ammos into the game from Fallout New Vegas that were missing in Fallout 4. A very useful requirement for mods like this that adds custom ammo types that are shared between all your mods, so you don't have to download 80 compatibility patches. Altogether, this makes for a really fun new pistol that's very, very unique. Again, offering rocket-propelled ammo, not something you see every day. We actually do have a Gyrojet mod on the Nexus, but it is a massive rifle. Now we've got something a bit more compact, and I think that's pretty neat. The next mod we're checking out is another pistol known as the H&K P30L by Cravez, or Cravez. I don't know, I don't think I've seen this user before, but this is a really cool new pistol. This thing features custom animations, a bunch of attachments, and some really, really cool aesthetics. This is a bit more modern and tactical for those of you who are lore purists, but it is still a really, really cool pistol. This features a good bit of tactical options, but it doesn't go too overboard or completely flood your weapons workbench menu. You have the absolute necessary stuff like compensators, suppressors, and lasers, but nothing too crazy beyond that. A really nice feature with this pistol is that it does feature an ESL flagged ESP, meaning it will not take a plug-in slot in your load order, which is a very nice feature. You're not going to have to do that yourself. It's just going to be able to be added free of charge with no consequences. This is actually a pistol I'm not really familiar with, so I was excited to play with this thing and get to use it a little bit in game. It's a whole lot of fun and has some really awesome sound design. I'll go ahead and let you listen to that now, as well as show off those cool custom animations. Some other nice features about this mod is it features a handful of optional files that let you tweak the way this mod functions. First of all, there is a reduced sound option. For those of you who think the firing sounds or reload sounds are too loud, you can reduce them with an optional file. Although in my opinion, this mod sounded fine in game. There's definitely weapon mods out there that are too loud, but this one seemed absolutely fine, so I don't think that's too necessary. There's also a tactical reload patch. For those of you who enjoy tactical reload, there is a compatibility option there, and there's even a leveled list patch. By default, this weapon has to be crafted over at the chemistry station, but you can download a leveled list patch to make it spawn out in the world on enemies. If you do decide to go the leveled list route, this thing will start spawning on gunners and in gun stores after level 10. Altogether, this makes for a pretty fun new pistol. It is a pretty modern and tactical one, but it's a pistol we haven't seen on the Nexus before, so that does make it pretty unique and a fun weapon to use. And finally, that leaves the biggest mod release of the week, one we've actually talked about on the channel already, and that is the Institute Technology Overhaul by Micalov. This is a massive, massive overhaul to the weapons of the Institute faction, which adds over 30 new weapons. Not only firearms, but cool energy weapons and heavy weapons and even melee weapons for Institute members to use. Not only you, but all of the Institute members as well, as they are added to all of the leveled lists. You'll find it on Institute scientists, synths, coursers, just about anybody who's a member of the faction will be using one of these cool new toys. Now, elephant in the room, this mod is massive, so if you want every single detail and you somehow haven't seen it already, go check out the full breakdown where you can see everything, because I guarantee you I can't fit it all into this short segment. But in case you missed that, or you just want a sort of too long didn't read version of the mod, this is going to add, like I said, a ton of weapons into the game. There are two versions of the mod, a light version and a full version. The light version will simply add them to the leveled list, and it'll function like any other weapon pack. But if you do decide to go for the full version route, it's not only going to add all these weapons, but completely change the way the weapons function for the faction. Now, every single weapon will have a biometric scanner that makes it so that people who aren't members of the Institute cannot use the weapons. So if you want to use them, you're either going to have to join the Institute or find a more creative method to use these weapons. One of those methods is to find a way to break into that biometric scanner. You can do so by finding magazines that are located all around the Commonwealth, which will allow you to bypass the biometric scanner and use the weapon for yourself. Alternatively, you can find another magazine over at the railroad, and you can jury-rig these weapons using other weapon parts to make it into a completely new gun. This option is not available for every weapon in this pack, but a good majority of them are. Most of the rifles and even some of the launchers are able to be converted into a jury-rigged version, which looks like a nif-bashed monstrosity, but it's super cool and super Fallout, and seems like something the Railroad would do. And what's really cool about that is all of the Institute weapons in this pack are of course added to the Institute, but all the jury-rigged versions are added to the Railroad level list, so you'll see those spawning around the world as well, adding a really cool new piece of lore to the faction that wasn't there before. And it's something that makes a whole lot of sense. The Institute, while they are supposed to be the boogeyman of the Commonwealth, are actually found pretty much all over the place, and so it makes sense for Wastelanders to be picking up this tech and trying to make use of it themselves, or at the very least the factions who are really trying to fight them, like the Brotherhood and, of course, the Railroad. Another big feature of this mod is two new workbenches that allow you to make all of these weapons, one of which will be used to craft all of the Institute weapons, and the other is a jury-rigging station where you can make all the jury-rigged weapons. At both of these stations, there's also some new items like different stealth boys and a handful of new grenades as well. Most of these weapons do use vanilla animations, although a very small percentage of them do have custom animations and sounds. But one thing that holds true for all of them is that they all use vanilla textures, and so of course, retextures do apply to these, as well as Creation Club skins. One last thing, much like the Gyrojet featured earlier in Mods Weekly, this gigantic pack is going to require munitions. It is a very, very integral part of such a huge pack to add more ammo variety to all of these energy weapons so they don't all just use fusion cells. In my opinion, this change is very, very necessary and adds a huge gameplay element that I think is really important to the mod. If every single thing in here just used fusion cells or fusion cores, those ammo types become very overpowered, as you don't need any other ammo type. But now, there's a lot of ammo choices that allow these weapons to feel like their own weapon and have different personalities and traits. So the big high damage weapons will use the electron charge packs, whereas smaller pistols may use small energy cells. It really just depends on the weapon. It's a lot more like Fallout New Vegas, and I honestly really appreciate that feature. So yeah, if you somehow missed this weapon last week and you're really wanting to check out a brand new huge weapon pack, or maybe you want to flesh out the Institute level list, this is pretty much your one-stop shop for all of that. It adds so many new weapons to the faction and completely changes the way they are in combat. It adds so much variety and makes them actually a pretty sizable faction that make a pretty decent threat now that they're using more than just the lame old boxy laser rifles. So yeah, by all means, go ahead and check this one out, as well as any of the other mods featured in this video. They will all be linked down in the description below, along with Xbox links if there are any available. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to drop a rating and consider subscribing if you haven't already for more videos just like this. As always, a big shout out to all of my patrons for supporting every single video, and of course, a very special thank you to Backbone, Danny, Freedom, Glasma, Indecisive Wolf, Logan Rigmaiden, Madly Matt, Microhan, Moonlit Gamer, Oscar, Scott, Sterling, Timmy76, Youth RC, and Voider for joining that Tier 3 Patreon membership. If you'd like to support the channel over on Patreon, you can do so using the link down in the description, but it is completely optional. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Peace!